Hi all, today we will talk about workload identification with Azure. In the last part, we have seen how we can configure it using AWS. In this part, we will see how we can do with Azure. So I am just doing this basic only for that PPT. If you want to know more about workload identification, if you check out my previous video, I will put a link in my description. So basically, we use workload identification so that our like workloads like your any application or VM running in your on-premises or your multi-cloud like AWS or in Azure can access our Google Cloud resources by using federated identities instead of using a service account key. So as we know, service account key is kind of very powerful credentials and it can present a security risk if it is not managed correctly. So workload identity eliminate this maintenance and security burden associated with service account keys. Instead of using service account keys, we will use short-lived tokens. We will see how to use that, and we can use workload identity federation with AWS, Azure, your on-prem AD directory, and many things like GitHub, GitLab, and any identity provider which supports OpenID Connect or SAML. And with the help of workload identity federation, we can use IAM to grant external identities the IAM roles. So suppose you have a VM running on Azure or AWS, so we can assign him a role so that he can access our Google Cloud resources. Even we can assign direct access to our resource, like you can directly allow your external VM to like storage admin or compute admin on a specific or storage specific bucket permissions, or you can use service account impersonation. Instead of providing direct access, you will provide access to the service account. So whatever the permission is applied to the service account, the same permission can be used by your external workload. And so this is that basically diagram. I'm not using all that PPT material as I have already discussed, but I will let me discuss this diagram. So suppose this is your workload, any application which is running on the on-prem or any other cloud application. And now suppose it want to access a resource running in Google Cloud. So what we can do, we will first of all create a workload identity pool in which we will configure your like identity provider. So suppose this is AWS, Azure or on-prem. So we will configure these details in our workload identity pool. So we will say this is the account name, or this is that like for AWS we will give the account ID. For Azure we can give like tokens, like for we will register a app in the Azure and we will provide a ID. So according to that we will configure all the details of your identity provider in our workload identity pool. After that, what will happen? Now suppose your workload need to access your resource in Google Cloud. So workload will go to identity provider and it will ask a temporary token of credentials. So identity provider will provide its credentials and that workload will go to security token service which is running in Google Cloud, and it will exchange these credentials with security token service. Now security token service, what will it do? It will ask workload identity pool that I have received these credentials. Do you trust this identity provider? Workload identity pool will check its configuration and it will see, yeah, I know this identity provider. It is configured in my configuration. I can trust it. And after that, a security token service will provide a short-lived token to workloads. After once workload get a short-lived token, it can just like impersonate the service account or it can directly access the our Google Cloud resource. And if it is using a service account impersonation, so we have to provide a workload identity user role to our service account so that it can work as a with workload identity. So basically this is the steps which involves around workload identity, and this all these things we will see how to configure this. So let's directly go to console and start configuring it. So right now I'm in my console. So this is workload identity pools. So let's create a pool for Azure. So we have to click on that create pool and we have to provide a name. So let's give a name and what we want, like Azure pool. We can give a description also, like this is my Azure WIF workload identity pool. We can enable or disable this pool according to your how you need, but I will make it enabled and will click on continue. After that, we have to select a provider. For provider like AWS, we have already seen. For this, we have to select Open ID Connect, which is supported by Azure. After that, again, we have to provide a provider name. So this the provider name is Azure, and you can give any provider which you want. After that, we have to give some issuer URL. For this, let's go to Azure. So I'm in my Azure. So let's first check the document. According to document, like for AWS, we have to use instance profiles, but this is not the case in Azure. In Azure, we have to use the manage identities. So when we enable that manage identity for our VM, so Azure creates an identity in Azure AD specifically for that VM. So we can use that specific manage identity to request an access token from Azure AD. So this is typically like done by your application running on the VM using Azure Identity or making a direct API call on the Azure Instance Metadata Service. So as we know, like we need a token. So with the help of identity manage identity, we can ask a token from Azure, and we can exchange the specific token with like security token service in Google Cloud. So before that, we have to do something like we have to create a Azure AD application, which we and that application URI we have to provide in here. So let's go and configure our Azure AD application. We have to register a new application. So I will go to app registrations, and so I will add a new registration. I will provide a name. Let's say my WIF. After that, you can choose this option according to you. I am going with single tenant only, and I will register my application. Once our app has been registered, we have to add an application ID URI. So you can click on this specific link, and you can add the application. Click on the add, and you can use this, or you can create a unique also. I will click on this save, and it has been created for me. Application ID URI. So our app has been registered, and we have an application ID URI. Now, if you go to back to these steps, it is also asking to create a managed identity, and we will create it later on when we create our VM. So we will have to attach that specific managed identity to our VM. So now let me low, and let's see what the other option we have to configure. Now we have done all the things for the Azure. Now we have to provide a issuer URL, and for the issuer URL you have to copy this and provide a tenant ID. So tenant ID means basically it means an organization ID which we have to provide. Like in AWS we have to provide our account ID. In this we have to provide a tenant ID, and we can find our tenant ID in Azure only. So if you go to default directory, here is my tenant ID. So what we have to do, just copy this information, and after that we have to provide a tenant ID in the issuer URL. We will go here and provide our tenant ID from here. We will copy this and just done. After that, you can choose a default audience, or you can choose a allowed audience. So in that we will choose a allow audience as per the documentation. And in that allow audience, we have to provide an application ID URI which we have using registered with the Azure AD. So if we go back to our app registrations, and if we go inside it, our app which we have registered, we have to use this specific URI application ID URI which we have created. So like this, you can add multiple audience which you want to allow. Basically what we have done as of now, we have provided our tenant ID within the issuer URL so that traffic can come from our specific tenant. And after that, we have provided an allow audience. And allow audience is something like it is our app. When we register our app, we can create an application ID URI. After that, we will click on continue, and we have to provide a like attributes. For attributes, we like in AWS we have multiple attributes if we click on, but for like Azure we have only one. We can choose this only, assertion dot subject, So subject can be anything like your user and all that. We will see how to use that, and we click on save. Click done. You can add condition if you want to use. You can create a CL conditions. I don't have any as of now. So let's click on save. So our pool has been successfully created. Now let's start our testing. So let me create a VM and install gcloud CLI. After that, we will work on it. So I have installed the Google CLI on my VM. If I go here, I think we can see like I have gcloud installed in this specific VM. So let's go and go inside this VM, and we have to attach a manage identity to this so that it can create a credential and can share with that our as with our GCP. So for that we can go under security. You can click on identity. So we have two options, whether we can create our own identity system or we can use a user assigned identity. So as of now we don't have any. So let's click on this. Let's see if there is an option to create a new one. So there is no option. So let's first of all create a new identity. You can use any identity which you want, like manage or like as we know there are two type of identities, manage and system generated. So we can use anyone. So let's go and let's create a new. So I'm in manage entity tab and I will click on create manage entity. So I don't know much about Azure, but if you think I'm doing something wrong and maybe that can be done by some different way, you can do like that also, or you can comment what are the other option I have to do this. I'm more into GCP only. So our VM is in West US. Let's give my WIF identity and click on review and create. So it has been created. Now let's go back into our virtual machine once again, and we'll attach this to our VM so that it can create a credentials. And we click on user assign, add a user assign, manage identity, and this is our identity, and we click on add. So now everything is done. Now what is pending? Let's go back to our GCP and we will provide permissions to our VM so that it can access our resources. So we click on grant access. So now we have two options. We can directly grant access or we can use service account impersonation. Let's first see how to we can do this. So we will click on download config. We will choose our provider, which is Azure. So as we know, in Azure, there is an application ID URL which we have to provide. That is not in the case of AWS. So let's see from where we can get this application ID URL. So if we come here, it says to check this application ID URL, we have to provide the application ID URI of your Azure application. If you remember, we have registered an app. So if we go back to our app registrations, and from there we can get our application ID URI. So if we go inside here, and this is our application ID URI, which is being used by our WIF. So we have to provide this here, and we have to click on download config. So it has been downloaded our config. Let's open that file and see what are the contents in it. Opened up my config file. It is not a secret anything. It is a kind of, it doesn't create any secrets which can be leaked. Only this provide information how to connect to your GCP. So we can see it is an audience, which is our pool WIF which we have created, and token type is it is JWT token, and token URL or like uh, token service, security token service in GCP, and this is a credential source from it can create a like get credentials. So this is like our metadata server, and it is providing like API. API means it is like Azure AD application URI it is using, which we have provided, and all these things. So let's copy this information and we have to put this information in our VM. So we will create a file credentials dot JSON, and we will provide this all the information in this file. Now let's see how we can access our resources. So before accessing our resources, let's go back and see now what we have to done. After you have done all these things, you can even use, if you are using bash, you can just provide this export this file path to your environment variables, or we can use gcloud also. For gcloud we have to provide a file path. So if we go and do, this is our file name, so we can copy this and we can provide this here, file path. So it will log in with this specific file into our uh, GCP. So let's provide this information and we will click gcloud auth login. Credential file is credential.json, and we click on this. So we can see it is saying authenticated with external account for credentials from this services. Our all this workload identity pool we have authenticated now. So let's now try to run some commands. As we know, we don't have provided any rules like IAM roles as of now. So if we run gcloud compute instances list, it's a like we have to provide a project value also. We can even set for, let's first set a project value also, so we don't have to provide it again and again. If we put config set project, let me copy my project ID. So this is my project ID. I have put it my project ID. I will click on yes. Now if I run, that's the same command. It say I have don't have some permissions to run this command, like I need compute instance list for this. So I can run gcloud config list to find my subject. So this is my principal, which I can use to give assign permissions to me in my Google Cloud. So this is principal, IAM, all this, and this is our ID. So this is my managed identity, which I have put it in my VM. So with the help of this managed identity, as it has been attached to our VM, we can try to assign some permissions. Let's go to our GCP account. So here we can see like in this managed identity, this is the thing which I'm pointing D01, which is here D01. So now let's go to IAM and I will click on grant access, and I will provide a principal, that is which I have been copied from there, and after that I have to provide a role. So let's provide it compute admin, so it can, we can see all the resources and click on save. Now I have provided the role. Let's try to see whether we can access now or not. We can see it is saying like we have 0 items. Let me run one more command. Let's see what have networks we have. You can see it is showing 2 networks. So you can see I am able to access my Azure Google Cloud resources from Azure with the help of workload identity federations. So it is a very simple thing which we have done, and you can do also these all these things, just but it is little complicated than as AWS, which is a straightforward. We don't have to do much things, just we have to provide our account ID in AWS, but in this they have this little much complicated, I think so, because in AWS we have to just provide instance profiles, but here first of all we have to create an Azure AD application, and with the help of Azure AD application we can access our resources. So once you create a Azure AD application, and then you have to create a managed identity also. So as we can see, this is the main step. So first create your Azure AD application and create a default application ID URI, and we have to provide that URI in our workload identity federation while configuring. After that, we have to again use this application ID URI later on when we download our config from while granting access. And with the help of managed identity, we can create a credential which we can exchange with GCP. So this is little bit confusing, I think so. But let's do one more thing. As we have checked direct resource authentication, let's go with service account impersonation. So let me first remove this axis as we don't need anymore this. So I have removed it. Let's see whether it's still working. Because we have generated account credentials, it is still valid for some time. After that, it will stop working. Let's go back to our workload identity federation, and this time we will use service account impersonation. So let's go over in our pool, and we will click on grant access, and this time we'll click on service account impersonation. But recommended one is direct access only. We have to choose which service account we want to use. So I have this service account, test service account. I want to use this. After that, we have to provide a subject. So this is the attribute which are provided during creation. So we can use this directly. And for the attribute value, we can provide this, our object principal ID, which is our manager entity. And we will put it here, and we will click on save. It will give again, we have to download the config. We click on Azure, and we have to provide application ID URI, and I will provide my application ID URI, and we click on download config. Let me open that file for you. So this time it is little different. Audience is our WIF pool, and the token URL is different, and this time we are using service account impersonation, and this is our account test service account, and we will copy this data and we will put it in our credential.json file which we have created previously. So let me remove that file once. So let's try to re-log in again. So this is the command to login, gcloud.login. So we will click on this. So it is saying that authenticated with external account. This is the test service account. So let's clear the screen, and if we run gcloud config list, and we can see this time it is showing test service account, which is being used to now run any commands. Previously it is showing our subject, but it is now showing test service account. So if you try to run any command like gcloud compute, we can try again compute networks list, but it is saying that we don't have any permission because we haven't provided it. So let's go to our console, and let's go to our service accounts. Let's copy this test service account and click on IAM, grant access, put our service account name, and let's provide a role compute admin. And before that, you just save it. There's one more role, as I've told in the starting, workload identity user role, which you have to provide to our service account, otherwise it will not work. So we have to provide that role also, workload identity user, so that it can impersonate. For federated workloads, we will click on save. Our policy has been updated. We have provided that role. So now our specific VM can impersonate service account. So like we have service compute admin role to our service account. So our VM can also use the service account role. So now let's run the cloud compute network list once again. We can see now it is working fine. We are able to access our G cloud, and like this we have done seen both for both of that, like how we can use workload identity federation with, and you can, even if you want, you can enable disable also this pool. You can go inside this pool or enable or disable, and you can see connected service account here. If you click on connected service account, it will told us how many service account has been connected and what are the Google subject or configuration we are using. We can download config later on also. If you want to disable this pool, just click on disable. So disabling this pool prevent any connecting identities accessing from GCP resources until the pool is enabled again. Let's click on disable, and let's see. So now it has been disabled. Let's see whether how much time it will take. So it will take some time. So even you can do according to you, but as of now we have done all the things, and just follow this document. I know it is a little bit tricky, and I am also not much into Azure, so I also don't know much about this, like how this Azure AD application and all this managed identity works. Maybe if you are a Azure person, you must know all this better than me, and I know you must find an easy solution or easy thing. Then, but it will help you. Uh, this video may help you to figure it out how to use this, and you can just read more about it about how to use this. And this is a very good document provided by GCP. In the next part, I will cannot use Active Directory deployment pipelines. I will see if it possible. Kubernetes we can see, and after that we will see some these options, manage identity pools and all that. So if you have any questions or suggestions or anything, just comment it down. I will try to work on it. And thank you very much.